You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. If you're new to the show, we release brand new conversations just like this one with unconventional money makers 7 days a week. So if you have not yet, please be sure to go to your podcast app of choice right now, including YouTube, and subscribe to the show over there, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, so you never miss out on an opportunity to learn how to make more money. Today on the show, we're talking about building and scaling businesses with my new friend, Bizzie Gold. Bizzie is a globally recognized entrepreneur, industry disruptor, and the founder of Break Method, the world's leading system for sustainable emotional rewiring. Over the past 2 decades, she has built, scaled, and exited multiple companies across mental health, fitness, wellness, and consumer products, generating tens of millions in revenue and proving that true innovation isn't just about impact. It's about building businesses that thrive. Bizzie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Let's go back in time like I do with most of my guests. Tell me how you made your first dollar ever.
The Wayback Machine. I don't know if I can talk about how I made my first dollar ever. Are we talking like first dollar, first job, or first legitimate entrepreneurial endeavor?
First time you ever remember making money, even if it was a kid, teenager,
So
or young
easy
adult.
peasy. I was a co-counselor at a children's camp starting at probably 11 or 12.
Wow.
And I realized very quickly I think I've always understood human behavior, even from a very young age. I was always good at reading people, and I was able to get otherwise unruly kids to actually do what they were told by kind of being sweet with honey, but learning how to positively manipulate them.
Hmm.
So very quickly, all the parents realized Busy's like the kid whisperer. So then I started getting all these babysitting gigs, and then I realized I was getting these crazy tips every time there would be. I lived in a very wealthy East Coast area in Connecticut. And
Okay.
then I started getting like $300 per parent tips at the end of every session.
Dang.
Then they started booking me for babysitting. So it kind of already spiraled into this whole thing where I was coming home. My parents one day looked at my cash and they were like, "Are you drug dealing?" I'm like, "No, I just am like the kid whisperer." Parents are liking to tip me a lot.
I was
So I
gonna
do
say that is a drug for parents, though.
totally, because they
Yeah.
just realized that their kids liked me, but when I would leave their child, I left their child more compliant
Yeah,
and
yeah,
better behaved than they were previously. And I do think that that's played a significant role in my business relationships moving forward because it did teach me, and I do think I kind of naturally fell into it. But again, because I'm aware and observant, I think I realized quickly what role I could serve in this system that was kind
yeah.
of pre-established and even disrupt it, right? Because all the other counselors that were there doing what I was doing, they were not making the money that I was making.
I
And
assume not.
that's
That's
continued in
wild.
my life ever since. Everywhere I go, somehow, even if it's been an existing structure or system, I find my own take on it and end up being able to squeeze it in a different way
Mm.
than people have previously squeezed it.
It speaks to making the most of the opportunity that you're currently in. There's so much opportunity out there, and I feel like there's so many people who vilify what they're currently doing, and by doing so they close themselves off to unknowingly they close themselves off to other opportunities. It's like if you're in a crappy job but you just show up and do a crappy job at your crappy job, well, you never know, the person that you were interacting with, that customer that you were rude to, could have been the one that owns a thriving business with a job opening to do something that you want to be doing, but you're not going to get that offer because you were so cold and rude to that person, because you're so stuck in this pity party that I just wish I had these other opportunities. It's like, well, opportunities don't just get dropped in your lap. They come to people like you who make the most of what they're currently doing and figure out how to maximize that opportunity. Then new opportunities just seem to come out of thin air, but then you just get called lucky, right?
You hit a bunch of great points there. One of which is, in my experience, the person that is frustrated with how their current business is going or their current job is going, and they're always looking outside of themselves for what this new opportunity would be that's better than what they have. I've always seen that person continue their bad attitude onto whatever new endeavor that they take. So that's why I always say my business now in mental health, if you don't deal with what's happening inside of your mind, you will just carry all those problems with you to the new thing. It doesn't really matter that it's new because your perception of reality will be the same in the new thing. So the reality is, that person, like you said, is much going to be much better served by actually trying to figure out how to emotionally regulate themselves in their job and learn how to have a positive attitude, even if their job sucks. Use the suck to build emotional resilience because then the opportunities will come to you. And that's exactly what you said. No matter where I am, I get loaded up with opportunities, not because I'm lucky, but because I connect with people. I'm articulate. I'm optimistic in the face of challenge. I'm not quick to talk smack about other people,
Yeah.
even when smack is talked about me. And I think those are some of the qualities that often that person that has kind of more the FOMO or grass is greener when it comes to business, they don't embody those qualities. So they will just keep taking those problems with them.
I love that you brought up those specific examples because even as an employer myself, those are those like soft skills that you can't necessarily measure, but they just make you feel good about that person being a part of your team. Like you can't quite put your finger on it. You don't really know what it is, but then you just go like, I don't know what it is, but like this person, like this other person, they do all the things that they're supposed to be doing. They're checking off the list. They're doing the job. They're effective at their position. But for whatever reason, this person, they just stand out more. And it has to do with a lot of those like actual key areas that you just pointed out.
I built a technology that it can actually predict that.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, that's the bulk of what I do. So I have a technology that can accurately predict each of those different factors and what scores specifically we would want them to have in finance versus operations or in sales
Love it.
versus creative department. So we can scan for all those markers in 20 minutes and tell employers exactly who's worth investing in. And let's say a corporation comes to me and they're like, we're having the following problems. I don't want to know who you think the problems are. I'll scan everybody and I'll tell
Mm.
you this is where the problems are coming from and here's why. And 9 times out of 10, people are like, it's like witchcraft. I don't even know how you did that. But it's because their brain pattern will dictate how they're perceiving reality and engaging with the work environment
Mm.
and will be able to accurately predict how they assume and then respond over a cascade of behaviors. So we'll know not just how they deal with something when they're first receiving the information, but how that will spiral out of control over time and then start to engage other people, whether they'll be prone to gossip and all of that. So we can predict all of that.
That's amazing. First of all, second of all, I want to get into how you got into doing that. We kind of breezed over it in your intro here, just of all the different companies you've built, scaled, and exited across multiple different facets. When you to bridge the gap a little bit, when you were kind of this like young hustler, making advantage, taking advantage of every opportunity that you were given and making some money, having a bunch of cash sitting there, was your next step straight into entrepreneurship, or were you looking for people to work for? Did you go to school for something in particular? What was the like process to go from high school to career?
I definitely got thrust into it, but I will say I do think that the prevalence of internships in the colleges that I went to certainly helped that because instead of being stuck in the classroom, I was out in the field working with experts. And when somebody has these qualities that we're able to scan for, you stand out in an internship. And typically in that internship, the higher ups are like, we want that person to work for us, which is
Sure.
exactly what ended up happening to me. I made it all of 2 weeks in my internship in LA working for a woman who started the celebrity gifting suite. So this would have been back like early 2000s. Celebrity product placement was really just starting, and she had designed this whole concept of having these big, beautiful hotel suites where you have all the product placement, you've got the press there, you do your invite list, and you kind of walk people through and get all the product placement. And I went to that internship my very first day, scared shitless, and I see this sweet little Korean girl typing on her computer, and this woman who's a not nice person from Paris, France, is just screaming at her. And I'm a feeler, so I was already feeling for her.
Yeah.
So I step in like, hey, is there anything I can do to help? And she's like, yeah, yeah, can you help me with this press release? And I was like, yeah, no problem, got that. So I take over the press release and I turn it in, and she goes, this is beautiful. You're fired. And I was like, no, 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 I was not trying to get her fired. That was not
Oh
my
my
fault. I was
gosh.
trying to help her. And this was my first experience of what I can only describe like a Devil Wears Prada sort of situation that I think probably in 2025 is not legally allowed to exist anymore. But like early 2000s, it was totally legit. It was like legit to basically borderline abuse your employees and get away with it. And I will say, I was about to embark on what would have been the hardest year of my life in business because of this particular boss. But it made me who I am today. And I always tell people whenever they're complaining about their boss, I'm like, literally, I owe everything in my business career to Natalie Dubois. So, Natalie Dubois, you were such an asshole, but I am me because you abused me for a year and I put up with it. And I continued to rise up to every single challenge. Every time she tried to break me, it made a new level of emotional resilience and creativity emerge in me. So, she never was able to break me. Eventually, many of her clients were like, hey, this woman's not nice.
Mm.
And you're really good at this. You build great rapport with clients. People trust you. We want to fund you to start your own endeavor. I was
Oh,
like,
no way.
me?
Wow.
So then I kind of just happened to open my own PR firm because that's kind of what the group consensus was, is this is
So
what you should do. Let's fund you.
what was this all during college?
So I ended up getting offered a full salaried position a few weeks into my internship, and I was like, $80,000 a year.
Yeah,
Bye. And
that's
I
what I'm hoping to
immediately
make when I'm done with college.
right? So I immediately, and at the time I was studying broadcast journalism, I was not at all attached to that.
Yeah.
So I was a minor in public relations, and I was in my last year, yeah, like my last year-ish, plus or minus a few credits of college. And at this point, I'm historically, I'm really good in beginning stages, and then I can kind of peter out because I can get really excited about other things. And then if something else feels like more of a priority than this other thing, I won't necessarily feel the compulsion to finish it. Like I'm not somebody who's going to check a box just to check a box. If my loyalty and commitment's not in, I'm like, like,
I'm laughing because of exactly you're describing me to a T. Yeah,
well,
it's really difficult to do
entrepreneurs
something I don't
have
care
this
about.
thing. Yeah. So entrepreneurs have this extreme commitment and loyalty and tunnel vision that allows us to obviously get the job done and come up with kind of like the vision and the ideation and start to drive things forward.
Yeah,
But we typically need people who are more that busy work finisher that are going to get some of our projects across
across
the
the
finish
finish
line
line.
because
Yeah.
we'll get excited about more and more and more things. But I think that's one of the things that is beautiful in business is if you know how your brain pattern uniquely positions you for I think what people would call like your zone of creative genius, then you can hire the right people that
Yeah.
need to be your complement or your counterpart to get the job done. So in this particular arena, with school, I just was like $80,000 a year. It's not even for me. I didn't even blink twice. I just was like, yep, let's do that. And then the first thing I did was went to La Cienega Boulevard in LA and I bought myself a brand new black Range Rover and drove away in my Range Rover like this is gonna be awesome. At the time, I'm like $900 car payment, like whatever, that's gonna be easy. Not just not no sense of what
Of
I was really
course.
getting myself into at all. But I just at that point I was like, here's my paycheck, here's my rent, here's my car payment, like whatever. I want to
Yeah.
drive a black BMW. That was where I was at the time.
Well, I think that brings up a great
Or
point since this is a
Range
money
Rover.
related podcast, like
Hmm.
don't make decisions on what you can afford monthly. Make decisions on what you can afford to purchase. You should not be
Yes.
optimizing for I could make that monthly payment happen. It's not about making the monthly payment happen. It's about can I buy this thing? And if you don't have the money to buy that thing, don't buy that thing. Just keep
It took
reinvesting
me
into
many years
yourself.
to break out of that mindset.
I'm
But
I'm
at the time,
sure.
to put it in perspective, I was 19 at this time. So I was
Yeah.
just like baby biz.
Well, and to be fair, you're also in a the PR space in
Hmm.
LA. Like that, there's almost a there's something in the air there that makes you think that that's the path that you have to take in order to be successful.
And I had previously from a client gotten pushback about the car that I was driving because you end up in situations where you have to drive
Right.
somebody from one meeting to another. And I had a lifted Jeep Cherokee, like an off-roading Jeep Cherokee, which I thought was dope and I loved it. And to me, that stood out more than anything else. And they were like, no, no, you can't drive this car. And I was
That's
like, why not? It's
hilarious.
great.
Yeah. So PR was kind of the first business that you accidented yourself into.
It was. And then I started to work with brands on product placement and then work with my celebrity clientele. And eventually I got brought over to a social networking company that was trying to compete with MySpace to run their PR because they wanted me to head up all of their celebrity partnerships for their big launch. I was there for a while, and I won't say the name of the company, but I'll say this. Very quickly, I realized something was off and followed a hunch, and they were using the company as a front for something. And I, at some point, was like, I'm not getting dragged down with this ship because I kept pushing at the CTO. I'm like, So tell me how this works again. Every time
Yeah.
he'd come up dry, and I'm like, I'm not buying what you're selling.
Yeah. If you're
Where,
the
where is this
CTO and you
product?
can't tell me what this product does, yeah, we might have a problem.
So yeah, I made a lot of money there for a period, and it was a great part of my life because it was fun. But at a certain point, just the stress level of knowing that I was participating, I not knowing how bad it was behind the
Hmm.
curtain,
Yeah.
and were they drug dealers, were they arms dealers, what was actually happening?
Money
They had
laundering or
financing
something.
from
Yeah.
another big company. It was definitely like having left and looking back, it was definitely like a large money operating or money laundering operation.
Hmm.
I'm just glad that I got out of there unscathed, but actually the guy who was my CTO was like the wildest month of my life. I was trying to uncover what was going on. It kind of felt like a movie where I was like trying to figure out what's really happening here. My CTO was like, "Busy, you're crazy, nothing's going on." He takes me to a psychic this one day. We go to a psychic and she's like, "I just see nothing but black for you." And or maybe you end up in court. And I was like, "See, you're gonna end up in court. Something's wrong." He's like, "But what's this black thing? Like, why do you only see black?" So we get back from lunch and he's like fixated on it. And he just goes at the conference table, "Well, I mean, if I'm gonna die, I hope a bear takes me out." And I'm like, "Steven, don't say that." He gets killed by a bear a week later.
A
And at that
bear?
point, yes, flash bite to the neck on camera, filming a commercial for the company.
What?
And at that point, I was like, I'm out. This is doomed. I don't even care how much money I'm making. I don't want something bad to happen to
That
me.
is
And
wild.
I literally shut down my life, sold my car, sublet my apartment, and I moved to Hawaii, where I had never been before, and became a hippie.
And how long were you a hippie for?
About 6 years until I had my oldest daughter. She had a birth accident that resulted in her getting cerebral palsy. And at that point, I was like, shit, I have to make a lot of money to try to push back against some of the diagnosis that she's getting. So I formed what was my first personal company, like my brand.
Okay.
And from that point forward, I just everything that came through for me, I knew what the future was going to hold, and maybe other entrepreneurs can resonate with that. I'm better at seeing the finished product than I am seeing all the incremental steps. So it's like I can hold the vision for where
Yeah.
this is going, and then I have to try to reverse engineer it and kind of like build those in between really annoying incremental steps. So I knew that my first company, Booty, was going to blow up. Like I saw that it was going to be big like Zumba. I just couldn't see how I was going to incrementally get there. And going back to what you're saying about some people just, they'll call it luck. Within a few weeks, I was training Julia Roberts, and then I was training Pink, and then it just kind of kept spitballing from there
Mm.
until I was training a ton of celebrities in my method. And Booty got really big. At one point, we had over 7,000 certified instructors. It was taught in 83 countries. And I'm sure many entrepreneurs can relate to this. Sometimes a business feels so authentic to you in certain phases of the growth. And then at a certain point, I started to feel like a caretaker of it rather than it was mine. So it felt like I was then kind of holding it for somebody else
Yeah, like
to
it
pass it
grew up
along
and left the
to.
house, and you're still trying to pretend like it was 6 years old.
Yeah, and well, I think for me it was more like I just had this very clear sense that this was not for me anymore, but I couldn't yet just like let it go. So at that point I became very focused on how do I find the right investor because I know that entrepreneurship when you're dealing with a company that big is dangerous if you're not fully on board. So I knew that every day I was straddling these two worlds where I had like enormous overhead and enormous payroll expenses, but my heart wasn't in the grind anymore.
Mm.
So I felt like that was going to run out. So I started to look for investors, and that was where I made my first big exit. And actually, through happenstance and many years of quasi litigation, I actually own all those companies again now,
Oh, wow.
which is
That's
a
wild.
whole wild thing. So I sold three entities in that transaction. In that transaction, one was a yoga and fitness brand, one was a supplement company, and then one was a clothing company. And now I have them all back. So I got paid for them, and then I got them all back for $0.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So
Yeah,
essentially, the acquirer ran it into the ground and then you picked it back up for pennies on the dollar,
basically yes.
more or less. Yeah.
More, yeah, more or less. I think some of it could be hubris where somebody thinks, I've got this skill set and like, little, early 30-year-old busy with all these things like, yeah, right, she can't be doing that good of a job. And then they get in there trying to approach it like a corporation and
Yeah.
eventually you can squeeze the life out of an entity that has a strong community, that has kind of a more loyal brand
Yeah.
by trying to treat it like a corporation. And they essentially did everything I told them not to do over the course of a few years. And you can only go so far until that has long-term side effects.
I was going to say, especially the community led growth companies tend to get just strangled by PE firms. They don't know what to do with it because they can't wrap their mind around the loyalty that those people have to the brand. And when you start messing with the brand values, people start leaving in
I think
droves.
their idea was to try to make it more mainstream. And what made Booty so successful was being contrarian and against the mainstream.
Yeah.
So I think they were, and I'm sure somebody told them to do it. I'm sure there was some advisor somewhere
Oh
in
yeah.
some office that was like, oh, if you do this and this and this. But really, our brand was built off of more of a counterculture vibe. So if you then try to make it more like vanilla, basic girl, everyone's going to be like, this isn't the booty that I fell in love with. This is
Right.
something else entirely. So I've spent the last roughly year restoring it, and that's been wildly successful. So that's great. It's a strange thing to run two other large companies and then get three other
Yeah.
entities back. So now my team, thank God, is amazing, and everyone's really good about just kind of overloading their plate with me because once you have a good team, you really don't want to, at least for me, I don't want to step outside that team. Like we know how to do things together, and that could be any business, right?
Mm.
One of the businesses that I own is in aesthetics, one is in mental health. Now we've got supplements. So there's all these different sectors of business, but if your team knows how to approach entrepreneurship together and you know how to properly role differentiate, you can turn that to any business sector. It doesn't really matter which one.
There's a lot of people who listen to the show who are wanting something in the business space. Maybe they are working a full-time job and they have an idea for something, but they're not sure if it has legs and they don't know how to go out and make their first dollar doing that thing. If you were starting over today, Bizzie, with everything that you know now, with all the different sectors, industries, business models that you've touched, been a part of, led, what specifically would you recommend somebody would look into to get out and make their first dollar in entrepreneurship?
I think entrepreneurship is so challenging that your heart has to be in it first. There has to be some sort of bigger connection and purpose in it for you beyond just, I want to make money. A lot of the people that I've met throughout my career that want to make money, they don't typically have what it takes to get through some of the hardships that inevitably come with seasons of business. So I think number one, you have to make sure that whatever it is that you're drawn to transcends your desire for money. There needs to be some sort of commitment or value in it beyond the money
Hmm.
because the money's going to come and go. I've lost millions, I've made more millions, I've lost millions again, I've made more millions again. So there you have to have a high risk tolerance, and you're going to naturally have a higher risk tolerance when you're personally invested in something, when you really see value in a problem that you're solving. And I do think that for the most part, it is important that people are able to differentiate kind of an idea or a hobby or maybe like a smaller scale social media driven business from a brand that truly solves a problem that they can articulate clearly, that they can differentiate clearly from what else is out there. Because I do see a lot of people who they want the money or they want the fame. So they're trying to make these slight pivots or duplicates from something that already exists. And to me, the market's so oversaturated. I think I can smell that from far away, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs can. And that person's not going to have the dedication and resolve to get through the hardship that inevitably comes. There, as you know, there are different phases of growth. Just like in parenting, I have four kids. They call it the terrible twos. There are different phases in your business scale that hurt a whole lot.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to make personal sacrifices to get them to the next phase, all of your effort will be for naught. So I really do think that more so than anything else, it's like you have to be personally invested in the idea or believe in the idea wholeheartedly so that you can push that boulder up the mountain. I've never had a business that I've like bought into from somebody else or copied from somebody else. It's always just like, here's the idea this is a problem that I am aware of, that I've experienced personally, and here's the solution that I see for that problem, and then just believing fully in that solution until everybody else believes in it too.
What's the first step that you take when you have this idea and you want to go out and make something happen? How do you get it from 0 to 1?
So I think that question might be hard for certain entrepreneurs because once you've done it once, then you already have a platform.
Sure.
Right. To me, it almost feels like cheating, right? Every other brand after that, it's like I already had the audience. So then anything else I wanted to get out there was just easier, easier, easier. But with the first one, number one thing is, I think I shared this, is that when I get an idea for a business, I see it fully formed. And this sounds strange maybe to some people, but I literally, when I see the vision, I will see the logo, the branding, the graphics. Like I literally will get the full picture. It's almost like if I closed my eyes, if it was a physical space, I could go and walk into it and like
Mm.
look three-dimensionally. And then I have to figure, okay, shit, how do I do that? What are the different steps? Who do I need to hire? How do I need to do this? And I do think that for me, I'm really good at bootstrapping because I can overload my own plate to a point that is probably terrible for my health. And I am good at figuring things out. Like if there's one thing I know about myself, I can figure anything out.
Mm.
So if you can kind of get attached or connected to that vision, kind of like I tell clients that I work with when they're trying to bring businesses to life is that just like a woman is not supposed to talk about her pregnancy until you're kind of past that miscarriage phase, that woman still has to connect with that baby, right? There's still that phase where even if you're not telling anybody else about it, you're building into that identity and connection with your baby. The same is going to be true in a business. And sometimes those first few months, that is you by yourself. And I think sometimes people are so quick to bring on team members because they don't want to do the work themselves or they're kind of convinced, like, I'm not the expert or this isn't my field. I think those are the most important times to be totally pulled back in solitude where it's you and your vision and you're trying to figure everything out only then to eventually get into that second trimester where now it's like you believe in your idea, you fully formed your idea without any sort of outside influence or somebody getting in your head. Then you know how to do enough of the pieces of the business that you can properly delegate. I really don't believe that we can delegate something that we don't understand because then
Mm.
we can never hold that person accountable. So I'm a big fan of doing everything myself first. And then when I've gotten it to enough profitability, then I take that weight off of my shoulders and then start to bring team members in. Because I just think it's supposed to be this cocoon where nobody can damage your business dream, I think.
That's fantastic advice, Busy. Thank you so much for taking the time to share some wisdom with us. I know you have a lot of demands in your time. I know you're busy. You're traveling right now in a hotel room and still made time to spend with us. So thank you so much for taking that time. Let's move into the last segment here, sponsored by High Level. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, and you're looking for a place that you can use as a CRM as well as a marketing tool, it is a all-in-one software solution. Highly recommend going out and checking out gohighlevel.com/Travis for a free 30-day trial. Let's move into this last segment here. You ready, Busy?
I'm ready. And I use Go High Level.
There you go.
Love
Another
it.
another reason to use them.
Hmm.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would be fun to master?
Lawyer. And I think somehow I've already mastered it without being one, but lawyer, trial lawyer.
If you could sit on a park bench with someone, past or present, and chat for an hour, who'd it be?
Okay, so what came to mind first, and this is maybe going to sound morbid or strange to some people, but I'm a behavior scientist by nature. So I'm always trying to understand what drives people. And even though I'm a Jew, I would want to sit down to Hitler and be like, bro, what? I
WTF?
have
Yeah.
so many questions. Yeah, so Hitler only for the part of me that's just so, I have so many questions about all of that.
How do you like to consume information best? Books, audiobooks, blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos?
God. I think for me, how I have always received information the best is literally through meditation and not actual tangible consumption methods.
Mm.
So sometimes audio, but in general, I practice something that I call intentional ignorance, which for some people they're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. I am so good at getting information in all different areas of life, including my entire business, quite literally through meditation, that I don't have to read books. It doesn't actually serve me. And then I wonder, is this coming from me or am I stealing this from this book? So I actually read very few books, if any. I can probably name like 3 books I've read in the last 15 years. And typically audio instead of reading, because whenever I read, I start to get really sleepy.
What is your go-to pump up song, Busy? If you have one.
Yeah, no, I totally have one. So in general, probably Above and Beyond is usually my pump up. Not one particular song, just Above and Beyond in general.
What is the biggest mistake you've made in entrepreneurship?
Not dealing with a employee who I knew was a problem, and I just kept placating them and telling myself I don't want to rock the boat. I really like them. Maybe I should give her another chance. All the while she schemed against me to try to destroy my business eventually. So just, cut that right away. I've learned my lesson after that one.
As we get everything wrapped up here, where can people go to get more from you?
Bizzygold.com, and I have a book coming out on June 3rd called Your Brain is a Filthy Liar, and it's about self-deception and how it keeps us stuck in chaotic loops in our life and relationships. You can also check out breakmethod.com. I know I briefly mentioned our brain pattern mapping technology. You can do it as an individual. We have couples that go through it, and you can also use it for your company or organization to do recruiting or to figure out where problems are happening within your organization. And you can go to that at breakmethod.com.
Fantastic. Bizzie That's Bizzie gold.com. Let's go check out some of the stuff that Busy's got going on and pick up a copy of her book. She is putting all the lessons that she's learned in the decades and tens of millions of dollars that she's made in that period of time. And you can pick it up for like 20, $30. So do yourself a favor. Go pick up a copy of Your Brain is a Filthy Liar, which is also true. So Bizzie, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today on the show. Everybody else listening, remember, money will only solve your money problems, but it is a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.